This type of story is probably one of the most tragic and horrifying stories that we'll ever hear about.
She went on this murderous crime spree.
The happy and smiling Danielle was struggling with something dark.
She's insane. To do what she did, the way that she did it.
She thought that this eclipse meant that it was the end of the world. The apocalypse was here.
Eclipses, there's more births, there's more deaths.
As for the little girl who survived, she remains hospitalized with broken bones.
The door to the apartment was wide open and there was blood everywhere, in the hallway, in the elevator, and we now know this is just one part to a much bigger story.
There are sad stories and there are tragedies. This is neither of those. This is worse. This is a story of insanity, disguised beneath someone whom many trusted to heal and guide their life. 3 deaths, a 2-hour time frame and 3 different locations, all connected to one suspect. It all began on April 8, 2024, in the silent hours of the morning when the night could be heard whispering in the blowing wind. Around 3:40 a.m. inside a living quarters of the Montecito apartment complex in Woodlands Hills, there is a family on the verge of falling apart. A 34-year-old mother by the name of Danielle Johnson is embroiled in a heated argument with her 29-year-old boyfriend and child father, Jalen Cheney. The shouting of their voices echo through the walls, waking neighbors in the building.
A disturbing chain of events painting a dark picture. The initial crime scene, the family's Woodland Hills apartment, where neighbors say they heard a loud disturbance early Monday morning.
My daughter heard it around 3:30 or 3:40 in the morning. She woke up briefly by screaming, I guess, and then she fell back asleep because the noise only went on for about a minute.
It isn't the first time neighbors are in the midst of this domestic scenario. In the past, they recall that while it never escalated to physical force, the arguing became more frequent between Johnson and Cheney over the 1.5-year period they moved into the complex.
Looking at the history between the victim and suspect, they have been dating for a few years, but there's no prior incidents of domestic violence reported between the two, no calls for service at their apartment, and they've been living there for about 1.5 years now.
Neighbors at their apartment complex told NBC4 they often heard arguing and fighting.
Our neighbors have heard fighting, and I've heard fighting, but I could never imagine this.
This time, however, death is looming close by. Cheney takes a seat on the couch. Whether to calm his head or to continue their heated spat in a more comfortable location is unknown. But soon, the shouting turns to screaming as a knife plunges into his chest right above his heart.
Friends of ours heard pleading, blood-curdling screams, pleading for his life.
Cheney is now in a battle for his life as his vitals begin to plummet from the blood pouring to the floor. Police report that evidence suggests Johnson attempts to drag his body out of the apartment, reaching as far as the elevator, but at some point abandons the effort and drags his body back into the kitchen. The dead weight probably too much to move alone. Her failed plan to dispose of Cheney's body leaves bloody footprints in the corridor outside their apartment. According to reports, surveillance footage captures Johnson with a noticeable limp in the aftermath. The thoughts in Johnson's mind are now in disarray as she contemplates what her next move would be. There is her 9-year-old daughter present witnessing the brutal murder, and their 8-month-old daughter still in the apartment.
Eyewitness News has learned the 9-year-old is an eyewitness to the stabbing death at that Woodland Hills apartment.
He says Cheney was stabbed once in the chest above the heart, and the 9-year-old girl was an eyewitness.
Something is fueling Johnson's instability. In time, it would be revealed to be something more than an internal trigger, but one that hovered above the skies. Abandoning her lifeless boyfriend, she grabs her 2 daughters and rushes to her black Porsche before revving the engine and ramming through the garage gate to make her escape.
There's surveillance video showing the suspect leaving the apartment complex with 2 kids.
Law enforcement confirms 34-year-old Danielle Johnson stabbed her partner, 29-year-old Jalen Cheney, to death, then took her 2 young kids, put them in a car, and drove through the apartment gates.
Heard this big thump, like sounded like a bowling ball hitting my whole ceiling vibrated.
Johnson is speeding on the 405 freeway in the Westchester area around 4:30 a.m. Her foot eases slightly off the gas as she turns to her 9-year-old daughter and tells her to get out. Her daughter has the 8-month-old baby in her arms, so she makes a decision that could cost her own life. She denies her unstable mother's request, knowing that if they exit in a moving car in moving traffic, it will be the end. Johnson watches her 2 daughters and pushes them out of the vehicle before speeding off.
The suspect slowed the vehicle and opened the passenger door for her daughter and then told her to get out of the car, and when the daughter didn't do that, she then forcibly pushed her out of the vehicle in the middle of the freeway while moving, while the 9-year-old was holding the 8-month-old baby.
The 9-year-old springs into protective action and holds her sibling tightly. Sadly, as her body beats against the roadway, she sustains broken bones, forcing her to release the 8-month-old baby.
The 9-year-old girl was holding the baby at that time when she was ejected from the vehicle. As she hit the roadway, she injured herself and she let go of the infant.
In what could only be called a miracle, the 9-year-old makes it to the side of the road. Unfortunately for her sister, her life was lost when an oncoming vehicle crushed her body.
During that event, the 9-year-old sustained moderate injuries. She was able to get up from the middle of the freeway and run to the shoulder to avoid traffic. But unfortunately, the 8-month-old baby remained in the middle of the freeway and was struck by moving vehicles.
The 9-year-old taken to a hospital.
The surviving child, I just can't get her out of my mind. And I can see her little face and I feel very badly.
The surviving 9-year-old has now seen the brutal murder of the one who treated her like she was his own child and her newborn sister, both at the hands of her mother. What allegedly influenced her in these psychotic attacks will shock the world when revealed. Her SUV is now roaring down the highway at 100 miles per hour and increasing. The car is racing, her heart is racing, her mind is racing, and in that moment a grim decision is made. At around 5 a.m., her eyes spot a large tree as she enters the vicinity of Redondo Beach, and in a split second, she drives straight into it, ending her life on the spot. The boisterous sound of mangled metal blasts through the air with the massive impact.
Detectives say Johnson continued driving, going over 100 miles an hour before intentionally crashing her Porsche SUV into a tree on PCH in Redondo Beach.
Police are alerted of the carnage, along with the chaotic scene on the highway. At the time, Cheney's murder is still not yet discovered. Neither is a connection between all 3 made. At around 7:30 a.m., one neighbor exits her apartment to leave for work. That's when the bloody scene greets her. Other neighbors come to find the same gruesome scene.
This 26-year-old girl who lives next door to the family says she heard a heated argument coming from their apartment in the middle of the night. And when she left for work this morning,
their door was wide open. There was blood on the floor leading into their apartment, and then a trail of it in the hallway leading up to the elevator, and I saw some blood on the walls.
Walked out our front door, and to the left is their door, and their door was wide open, and there was blood all throughout their front door, all the way to the hallway leading to the elevator, and blood on the walls.
The neighbor's Ring camera seen flipped over on the ground near blood smears. She immediately alerted her father.
Called the police and told them that something was not right. And they told me when I spoke to the EMT to go in and check on the body, so I did. I started calling in there. I said, hello, anybody there? You know, nobody answered. Their front door was wide open. It was like propped open. I saw pretty much it was in disarray, and then I saw a pair of legs sticking out from the kitchen area. And he was deceased. He was face down on the floor, and there was a lot of blood.
The news of the other fatalities begins to reach neighbors, and that's when they put 2 and 2 together, that it had to be Danielle Johnson at the center of all the tragedies.
I saw it on my phone, I read it, and I screamed. And I called my husband and my daughter and said, you guys, come up. And they're like, what happened? And I read them the article, and I said, this has got to be our neighbors.
Police rush to the apartment to find the third murder scene, as they try to find any clues to expose the motive behind Johnson's killing spree. Physical forensics at each of the crime scenes located various pieces of evidence, including the murder weapon, tarot cards, black feathers, candles, religious figurines, and altars. Soon, these spiritual items were connected to who Danielle Johnson was, and the case turned into a twist of the unthinkable.
Inside her apartment, we're told dozens of tarot card decks, candles, religious figurines, feathers, altars were all found.
According to her website, Johnson, who went by the name Danielle Ayoka, was a certified Reiki master teacher who was trained in over 10 different alternative healing modalities. Her services included practical magic, healing with ancient teachings, zodiac healing work, and Mercury retrograde grounding, among other things. She also had an Etsy store called Rich Girl Magic, where she sells numerous healing spells and cleanses, all of which claim the cleanse automatically links to your aura when you purchase it. But you must follow the instructions inside the digital download in order to activate the Zodiac Healing Cleanse integration. Judging from the 800+ sales and 100+ reviews raving about the success of purchases like the Aries Zodiac Audio Healing Cleanse and the Tarot series, the Emperor Guided Visualization Audio, Johnson had built quite the brand and career in the energy and spiritual realm. Digging further into her life, investigators found more details about the suspect. Under her alias Ayoka, she branded herself as an R&B artist as well. But what added a shocking revelation to the case was when her personal Twitter page was discovered. With over 100,000 followers, Danielle Johnson, aka Ayoka, was a famed influencer in the astrology and Reiki world. Going through her Twitter posts, Ayoka appeared to believe that the eclipse which was about to happen the day she committed the string of murders was the apocalypse. Ayoka made posts calling the eclipse the epitome of spiritual warfare, urging followers to get protection and their hearts in the right place. A following repost warned followers not to look at the eclipse, for something big is coming. But the most disturbing one was pinned at the top of her account. In it, Ayoka posted a gif of a woman shouting with a speaker as she typed in all caps, saying, "The apocalypse is here." She again urged followers to choose their fate and urged all to repost her message to join what she called the collective. Audiences who followed her astrology teachings were now scared of the dark turn her posts had taken, not knowing that it was a foreshadowing of her later actions. In past interviews, Ayoka's perception of life showed that her decisions were guided and influenced by astrology and the zodiac signs. Months prior, she was a guest on the Scotty and Sylvia show, where she discussed how the Venus retrograde influenced her relationship by showing all the ways it wasn't grounded or working, along with the increase in deaths when an eclipse appears. Later in the interview, Ayoka breaks down how she strayed from the church into astrology. She found the teachings contradictory, and when she prayed to God for the truth, things like energies, chakras, and human aura were revealed to her. This deeper look into her life and evidence found at the crime scenes presented a convincing angle that somewhere along the way, Ayoka got too deeply rooted in her beliefs, causing her to inflict murderous acts on those she once loved, before inflicting the same on herself.
She was warning people. She was saying, pick a side. The way that she typed about it was in all caps. And you could tell by her actions that it wasn't just a ploy to get attention or, drive up her followers or whatever the streams or whatever she was looking for. It looked like she was very disturbed.
There were plenty of similar posts and videos on social media predicting all kinds of disasters and the end of the world.
And when you're sitting on TikTok or you're on social media, and clearly she was an influencer, so she watched a lot of this stuff, it's very easy to get sucked into the fear that these videos start to create.
On hearing the dreadful news, Julie Russell, a senior licensed teacher of Reiki and a registered nurse, said Johnson's actions go against the principles of Reiki, which emphasize love, light, and happiness. Russell, along with a family member of Ayoka, both speculated a different cause to what sent her down the path of carnage. They believed that she was a victim of postpartum issues after giving birth just 8 months prior. However, Dr. Natalie Razgun, A Stanford professor of psychiatry who has studied postpartum psychosis questioned that conclusion. Licensed clinical psychologist Dr. David Swanson also had doubts that postpartum issues were the sole contributor to Ayoka's deteriorated mental state.
Could this have been postpartum depression?
I don't think it would have been totally postpartum depression, because we have a lot of women who deal with postpartum depression and it doesn't result in something like this. But certainly any type of mood disorder makes it much harder to cope with other things as they start to come up.
What she thought to be the apocalypse came and went, and the world continued as normal.
Perhaps she thought that this eclipse meant that it was the end of the world. The apocalypse was here, especially because of some of the statements that she made.
Sad that she took 2 innocent people with her. The worst is her 9-year-old daughter was forced to relive the traumatizing memory to assist with investigations, as she's the only surviving victim who witnessed everything.
As for the little girl who survived, the one who's thought to be about 9 years old, she remains hospitalized, we're told, with broken bones. Her father, who lives out of the state, has been notified, and detectives will be talking to her. She is the only person who witnessed all of this and knows what really happened.
Her 9-year-old is the sole survivor and the only witness to what happened. Investigators say she told medical staff what she saw. She is expected to survive. Neighbors are already praying for her.
My heart is with that little girl, and I hope to God she's got family someplace that is taking care of her.
My heart goes out to her, hoping that somehow this doesn't cast her life down a dark path. Always get help. If your mind feels like it's breaking, if your thoughts begin to deceive you, please contact the necessary organizations in your area for help. What can begin as a peaceful early morning could turn into a tragedy if your mental state is ignored. May all the lives lost rest in peace, and their families muster the strength to live on. For more true crime documentaries, check out one of the videos on the screen. This has been an episode of Mystories, where true stories from around the world come to life. What stories come next? Like, share, comment, and subscribe to never miss what intriguing chronicles will be told.